Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of PEM Rules, the Pediatric Emergency Medicine podcast. I'm Yaron Ivan, and I'm super excited to welcome you to the first of many jam-packed and informative episodes about pediatric emergency medicine. I'm a PEM attending in Orlando, Florida. Moved here in 2016 after completing my PEM fellowship at UPMC's Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh, prior to which I did my general pediatric residency at Bay State Children's Hospital in Springfield, Massachusetts. I've always been very passionate about teaching and have been educating residents, medical students, PA and PA students. It's a lot of fun for me, and I guess it's been valuable for others as well. I've been the recipient of several teaching awards, and one of the challenges that I've always had is how to share and spread my knowledge that I've been blessed to receive from my mentors and my teachers, and how can I pay it forward? And this podcast hopefully is one way to do so. During my fellowship, I learned a lot of rules, so to speak, that helped me make clinical decisions and better communicate with my colleagues. And those rules are the inspiration behind the name for this podcast. PEM Rules is a dedicated pediatric emphasis on the pediatric emergency medicine podcast where I will be discussing several aspects of pediatric emergency medicine. I'm going to dedicate a significant portion of the episodes to education, clinical and non-clinical, and then the rest will be sharing some stories, tips, and other helpful, relevant stuff for all of you guys who treat kids in the acute settings. My hope is to help support those of us who treat kids in the urgent care, emergency department, or any other acute settings. In addition to the educational topics, there will also be episodes with guest speakers for us to learn from, including specialists that I regularly consult in the emergency department, like orthopedics, neurology. We're going to speak to some nurses and other support staff. I'm also hoping to hear from you guys, the listeners, and get some feedback and hear about the topics that you would like to talk about and you'd like to hear on the show. Finally, as you may have guessed from the name and the logo, I'm also a musician and enjoying playing many instruments, so I'll be incorporating some fun music here as well. I love pediatric emergency medicine. I love music. They both rule my world, hence the name PEM Rules. Before we jump in, a huge thanks to Andy Little and his friends from the podcast EM Over Easy who inspired me to get this project started. You can check out their podcast EM Over Easy. It's fantastic. It's been around since 2016. Just as a reminder, by listening to this podcast, you agree not to use it as a medical advice to treat any medical conditions in either yourself or your patients. You should consult your own physician for any medical issues that you may be having, and under no circumstances shall this podcast be responsible for damages arising from use of the podcast. And this podcast should not be used in any legal capacity whatsoever. I'm not trying to change the standard of care, just trying to give you some advice and teach you some information. There is no guarantee regarding the accuracy or statements or opinions made in this podcast. My other disclaimer, very importantly, as you can hear by now, I have an accent. I wasn't born and raised in this country. I'm going to try to be as clear as I can. I got to tell you, I've been here since 2000 and it's a losing battle. Thank you all for listening. I hope you will find this podcast fun, entertaining, and most importantly, educational and informative. Thanks again for tuning in, and check out the next podcast where we start discussing the PEM rules, starting with rule number 1. It's not the patient's job to prove that they're sick. It's your job to prove that they're not. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.